Jeep Wranglers, because nobody wants to sit in the back of a passenger bus going up Haleakala or the road.
I don't know that I want to drive an 8-passenger bus going up that.
They just had a blizzard there.
Yeah, and so there was one whale watching.
They had a blizzard in Hawaii?
I know, and I saw today that the runways were shut down in Maui. That's where they're going because the electricity went out. So wouldn't that just be the worst thing?
Were you ready?
Hawaii, you just can't, like here, you can circle it and go someplace else, but in Hawaii, you're sure the plane.
You gotta go to the leper colony island or land over there or something.
The land of misfit toys.
And so then my latest brilliancy was, I think I'll just hire a private chef for New Year's dinner. So I did. I figured, what the hell? It's your money, kids. Enjoy it.
Dude, I want a vacation with Nancy.
Well, you can go. I got a guest house or something.
We have a pool and a pond. A pond would be good for you, Mike. You know, that'd be good.
I think I may barricade myself in the guest house and just not come out.
All right, so we got 2 minutes. 2-minute warning.
All the scientific information, all the stuff had no effect on him, but when he realized that he couldn't go to the bathroom, his wife.
All right, I'll get back to you. Well,
Whatever it takes.
for Jennifer, it was my daughter saying, "Oh, so you're not vaccinated?" I feel, I don't know. I mean, if you're sick, even if you're asymptomatic, I'm scared if you would get it. So she's like, "Well, I guess I can get a vaccine." I went, "There you go. Yeah, I see how this works."
Unbelievable number of reasons why to do it.
I thought my daughter, would get vaccinated when she found out she wanted to go on this spring break trip to Europe with schools for UCM. They have a 1-week thing during spring break. I thought she would do it, but you have to be vaccinated. She's like, "Well, I guess I won't go." I was like, wow, that was really one of the only things you wanted to do. That's
The boys' state, it's a big deal. They've always had it at UCM. This year it's gonna be at Lincoln.
nice.
How they got it, I don't know what the deal was, but it's gonna be that second week in June or whatever the heck it normally is.
That's pretty cool. All right, so we are just after 6 o'clock. Let's get started with our work session. And with that, I would open it up to anyone who has anything that they want to talk about on the budget for this session.
Well, I'll
Okay,
start.
Mr. Hammond?
Well, last council meeting, I was proposing that we move all employees with 30 years of service or more up to the top of their salary scale. And I'm kind of disappointed that administration has come out against it now because, they say that given the cost and low number of employees. Well, the cost is really minuscule when you look at their numbers up there, which they're saying over a 5-year period, the pay range at a cost between $624,000 and $1.2 million, which is really less than a couple $100,000 a year. And, and these are employees that dedicated their career to this county for over 30 years. And I think it's ridiculous that they're not at the top of their scale. And we put in, I want to put in a provision where that they have to perform at above average level to receive that. And I think we should do it.
What would that provision be, Dave? Do you know? To explain that.
Basically, it would be any employee with 30 years or more with the county that scores 3.6 or above on their next performance evaluation would be moved to the top of the pay scale.
Would you say top of the pay scale, or would you say 30 years at 90% and then 35 at 95 or something? Or would you want it to slide, or you want it to be at 100% in 30 years?
Well, I would like to see it 100% in 30 years. But if somebody has another proposal, I'm willing to budge a little bit.
Mr. Cronin?
I'd like to look at it a little bit different. I think we're looking at the trees instead of looking at the forest, okay? And to me, the question isn't about pay grades or comp percentages and all that. The question is, are we paying our workers comparable salaries to other people in similar departments? I've looked at the studies that the HR department did before, and in the past, they had some comparables that I didn't think were really comparable, okay, like Crestwood and places like that. She said she's changed some of that. But what I'd like to do is, I think this council has been lax in forming any type of committees to look at anything. I think we ought to have a compensation committee, and I think we ought to look at the pay ranges for everybody. And we don't have to go far for that. For our county workers that do municipal services, like our police officers and our highway workers, we could look just simply at the 4 cities in our counties: St. Charles, St. Peters, O'Fallon, and Wentzville. St. Charles with the casino money will be in the high side. Wentzville, because they're growing, will be in the low side. O'Fallon, St. Peters probably in the middle. You take the comparable for instance, like say a police captain in those 4 cities and compare it to ours and give you a better comparison. For other workers, like if they're in maybe HR, not necessarily HR, but let's say the recorder's office or the election authority or whatever, you might have to go outside of municipal government and maybe look at St. Louis County and Jefferson County. St. Louis County is a little wealthier than us in some respects, so they may be a little higher. Jefferson County is a little smaller, but that would give you good comparable. But I think instead of fixating on percentage of the comp ratios and the pay grades and all that, what we really, really need to do is look at how our folks are being paid and comparable to their peers. And I don't think we're doing that right now. I really don't, okay? I think that was evident with the Post-Dispatch pay study that the 2 ladies there did. And I'd like to review that for the county-wide. I realize it could take some time. That's why maybe we need to do a committee on it. But that's what I'd like to do. I understand and I'm supportive of what Dave wants to do, but I'm also supportive of what Bob Snur sent out to us. And this is a can of worms that when you start opening it, how do you really deal with it? So I don't really want to deal with it in one issue at one meeting, okay? And that's particular just 30-year employees, at one budget session. I'd rather look at the whole picture and see where we really are. Maybe there's areas of the county where we're perfectly fine. Maybe there's other areas of the county where we're not. But I think we have a duty as council members to make sure that the employees of this county are paid fair and adequately. That's my 2 cents.
Mr. Brazel?
I would say, we do these pay studies all the time. We've done so many of them, and we never stick to them anyway. And that's why we're here where we are, because we didn't stick to the last consultant that we paid $80,000 for.
I don't think we got the software. I think it's just a matter of plugging it in the software now. Am I correct in that? Yep.
I just think though, Joe, that here's the only premise this is what I'm going to say is, I agree with Dave on the fact that we hire people, they come to work for the county, and here's their pay range. We tell them that. It's like, you're going to get health insurance for your family, you're going to get dental, you're going to make this much money, and here's your pay range. It's like a contract almost. I know it's not really a contract, but it's a level of expectations when you hire someone that's what they expect. And so after 30 years, they're still at 50% of your pay scale. That's almost a fraudulent way to try to hire someone and say, oh, you're gonna make this much money, but in reality, you're never gonna get to that level at the way we're doing it. Now, certain people we're doing these changing in, with certain county counselors, finance, they're getting all these increases. And I'm not saying that any of those folks don't deserve it. I'm not saying that with any of our employees. But I'm just saying that if you're gonna hire someone under the pay range, then by God, they should hit that pay range. And these guys that did 30 years, they should be at least 90% of 100%. I don't understand. And if they're so terrible, why are they still working for the county?
I disagree with you in the fact that I don't think the average person cares about pay ranges or percentages. I think they care about how much money they're getting. How much
Well,
they're
that's
making.
exactly what this does, though. I mean,
Well, that's not the way I look at it, okay? For instance, if you're only at 50% of your pay range, okay, but that 50% of the pay range is still higher than what you would make in St. Charles, St. Peters, or O'Fallon, then you're doing okay. You know what I mean? We
I
don't
bet
know
there's
that.
not one case in this county that would be true.
I'd like to find that out, and that's why I think we need to do more work on this. That's my opinion.
Any other?
Well, a pay range is not a contract, okay?
No,
That's.
no, I know that. I just
Okay.
said it's kind of like they hire you with that pretense that's, by the way,
It's not
Ms.
a
Schneider.
pretense,
Well,
is
no, Ms. Schneider, by the way, when you come work for,
You can
you're,
call me Nancy.
oh, Nancy, I'm saying like if I'm interviewing
Oh,
you,
okay.
you know,
If-
you'll come in and this is what we'll offer you, this, and here's
Mm-hmm.
your package. It's just kind of false, I think, if that, either change all the pay ranges, get them more down to a realistic
Mm-hmm.
perception, or hit them.
Yeah, I kind of think, I mean, and my feeling is I think there's a problem with the structure or whatever, system we're using here. And I think it's probably time that we took a look at that. But the fact is, if everybody, for the most part, I mean, there are always exceptions. Let's assume you don't get a reclassification or you don't get a promotion, everybody's getting the same percentage of increase. Right? So I still am not quite sure how some people have been here 30 years and they're at 50% if they've been getting the same rate as everybody else. So obviously, it's the fact that the ranges are being changed, and I don't know what they're being changed based on.
I think there's a couple of things to note, though. Number one, not everybody has stayed at the same pay range the entire time they've been here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Some
They're
people
changing
have
the
moved.
ranges and
So
their
let's
the
say,
titles.
to use Joe's example, you came in at a 207, right? And you have this pay range, but you got promoted
Yeah, sure.
during that time frame. Say you've been here 25 years, right? And in a 207 pay range that you got hired in, you would be at the upper end of that scale by 20, 25 years. But we moved you to a 210. And now you're at a 210 because you got reclassified. Well, now you're still 25 years or so, but now you're at 50%. And I think that's the biggest problem that I have with kind of the way that you're laying it out right now is if you've got 30 years in, and I had you at a 208, and I moved you up, but you get promoted next year, and you move to a different pay range, according to what you just proposed, I have to move you to the top end of that new pay range that I just promoted you to. I don't have anywhere to move you because that bill that you're proposing said 30 years, whatever pay range that you're in, you move to the top. Well, if Samantha does the comparisons and says, you should actually be, that job should be at this pay range. So I'm not moving just you, I'm moving that job to that pay range. According to what you just proposed, I got to move you there. I could give you huge back-to-back raises because we said 30 years you move. Now, I grant you, how many times is that going to happen? I don't know. But I don't like that precedent of us setting that. So I like the idea of making sure that we move people through. Nancy, I think to your problem, or to your point that you brought up, the problem that we've had is we have not been giving consistent merit raises to employees
Yeah, sure.
over the years to move them through. In many cases, for some of the past few years that we've been here, we gave cost of living raises and that was it. Is that fair? So when I gave you a cost of living range, a raise, you did not move one note on that range. You didn't move at all. So especially back in 8, 9, 10, not only did we not give any raises, we cut a bunch of employees. right, when we brought them in. So those people who did stay didn't move at all. And I know we've had a few years since then, since I've been on the council, where we have not given any merit raises at all either. And any time that we're going to do that, you're going to get stuck and you're not going to move forward. Go ahead, Joe.
I think the old adage, be careful what you ask for, applies here too, because if I understand this correctly, if we bring those 30-year employees to 100%, when you're at 100%, you don't get merit increases anymore, is that correct?
You won't get
Yeah.
it for the rest of the time that you're here.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's gonna hit them in the wallet, okay? So I think this issue's far too complicated to get it solved in one budget work session. I'm sorry, if we really wanna tackle this, we need to do it right, okay?
Joe, there's already a lot of people that have 30 years or more that are already topped out.
So they won't get merit.
So they don't get merit,
I
but they're
think that's-
happy that they got there. The ones that I've talked to, that I know are at the,
Well,
finally
if
reached
you don't
that
get
point.
merit, you're gonna get 2% pay increase this year, and 2% don't cover inflation that we've got. 7% doesn't cover inflation. So I think the system's got some problems anyway, if you're not taking your very best people and giving them an opportunity to get a merit increase to keep up with inflation.
Terry.
You know, again, talking about.
I don't think people think that way.
Yeah, talking about these ranges now, I've been on the council 14 years now. I've listened at various times when we've had these studies. And from what I understand from listening to all this is that supposedly what, Joe, you're talking about, the comparison to other communities and that's supposed to be built into this formula that we have. And so, I don't understand the formula, it's probably fairly pretty complicated, but I think that is already, we might not be happy with exactly what they've come up with, but I think it's in the formula, okay? That we're taking into account what other people in other governments in similar jobs are making. I'm not saying that it's 100% true, but
Well, I can tell you, when we looked at the police pay not too far back, okay, there was two ringers in there, St. Louis City and Crestwood, and those drove the averages down for everybody. If you throw those two out, it was a totally different story. We did that. So, I mean, one thing is, I'm sure it's complicated, but one thing we need to establish is, who are the comparables? Who are we comparing to? Because I don't think letting the HR do it necessarily is yielding us the best results, or most fairest results.
Can I-
And one other thing I
you come
want
up
to throw
real
in
quick?
here, since you brought this up, Mike. There's a lot of employees that don't start at the bottom. I mean, they come in, they have good credentials. They don't start at the starting scale. They start up several steps up into the pay grade. So
Sure.
you got to keep that in mind, too.
So in talking, yes,
Chairman, can I ask Samantha a question?
I was about
I
to,
was
but
gonna
go
say-
ahead.
I was going to say this, but I'll ask you if you agree before I do. I thought the chairman, made a good point explaining that the problem here is when people get promoted, and especially they get promoted late in their career and they don't have a chance to get the 30 years. I would venture, and tell me if I'm wrong, but is there anybody working for us now for 30 years that wouldn't be at the top of their pay schedule if they had stayed in the same job and
No,
had never gotten a promotion?
they did at the
And of
top.
course, a lot of them have gotten promotion and still are at the top, but the half of them that aren't, a lot of them is because they got promoted later in their career and they just haven't had enough time. And they may not ever have enough time to get there because they didn't get that promotion until they had 25 years in.
Yes.
Okay.
So Samantha, when we're, to Mr. Cronin's point of looking at comps, and I know we've talked about this before, and we talked a lot about it last year. How does your department go about picking who is the comps for us to look at for those particular positions?
So if we're going to do certain positions that you can't find in pay factors, then we do benchmarking for those positions. So we look around for municipalities around us that are similar in size and have positions that are similar to ours, that have job duties that are similar to ours. We want to at least have 3 municipalities minimum that have a job that's the same. So we don't just look at title, we look at the job duties as well.
So this job description match,
Yes.
not just title, because we can call
Correct.
it different things, but if they're
Exactly.
doing the same thing, it's different from that standpoint.
Yes.
So when we do our comparisons, to Joe's point, are we looking at the 4 municipalities in the county?
So when we were talking about police officers, we looked at all kinds of municipalities just to try to get a better feel of what we had out there. So, again, we still look at those job descriptions. We still try to find matches for job descriptions. When you're talking about, I'll use captains, for example, just because they're captains doesn't mean the job duties are the same. So you have to keep that in mind when you're talking about pay. Some captains may get paid more, but their job duties are not the same as ours. So we do have to keep that in mind when we do those comparables.
Okay, go ahead.
Sam, are we down employees, like, for instance, the police department? How many, are we down on hires? Like, are we supposed to be at a certain level and we're down?
No, we're good in police officers.
Street department? Everybody? Street department too?
Street department, I think might be down. I'm not sure on that one.
I mean,
Councilman, corrections is down.
And corrections is
Corrections is way
down.
down.
corrections? I mean, so, I mean, if you look at it that way too, like, where are we down? We're, you know, like, even our attorney staff, I know we're down quite a bit on
Yeah.
that too. So I understand we're raising that up. I understand that that's a good barometer there, but if we're down in certain departments, that pretty much means we're too low in pay.
Not necessarily. Sometimes when we look at those, we actually do those exit interviews and find why people are leaving, and a lot of times it doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with other things. So we do keep that in mind. We try, like I said, try to be as comparable as possible, and we do keep those in mind for the exit interviews and why people are leaving. All those things are factors that we consider when we're doing these comp analysis.
Go ahead.
I would like to say, since we've gone, and you've taken over at HR, and we've looked at some of these positions, the grades have not been, aren't adequate. I think you all have done a wonderful job, and I want to thank you, Samantha.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So when you look at this, what is your recommendation for moving us to get to where Dave's trying to get, which is moving people through these pay ranges faster? Sorry to put you in front of God and everybody, and I just did that, so I'm bad. I know that's tough. Hey, my bosses are all sitting over here, and this guy just put me on the, so I'm sorry to do that. But just looking
You want us
from,
to leave the room?
yeah, if y'all could leave, that'd be great. It's not like it's videoed or anything. But just looking for a recommendation from the council, because I know in talking with Jennifer before, and she has been very direct with me and letting me know, look, if the council wants this to happen, then the council needs to make this known. So this year, the council made it known early on. And we were clear last year on the fact that we wanted this to be a priority to move our employees through because we want to keep our employees. And was it earlier this year we did highway, or was that last year?
That was last year.
Boy, time flies. It feels like it was just this spring. But that was a part where we were losing way too many employees. We weren't being as competitive as what we felt like we needed to be. So we took an emergency measure and made that happen. Now, I do not want to get into the part where any of our departments feel like, hey, the way for me to get a raise is go lobby my councilman. So my councilman comes in and starts overruling my manager. When we started talking about police, one of the first thing I do is call the chief and say, tell me how what we're looking at is going to affect you as a manager. And I would do the same thing with highway or anybody else. I don't want to create a bad situation for a department head, because at the end of the day, we can sit up here, pontificate what we think needs to be done in our ultimate wisdom as a body, and then we just laid a big sandwich on that manager has to deal with for the rest of the year. I don't want to do that. So that's a long way to say, what do you think are the best policies that the council should be considering in moving these employees through the range?
The easiest way and the quickest way is those merit increases. I mean, that's the way that employees are moving through those ranges, and they have not been consistent, and they haven't been large enough, so that's causing a huge problem. It's causing a problem with compression because we do have people coming in that are getting paid higher than the minimum, and they're bumping into people who've been here for a while. Again, that's because we're not moving people through the ranges.
So would an idea like Mr. Cronin's talking about of creating a commission for something like that to look at, would that be helpful?
As far as moving through the ranges go,
Yeah, for recommendations like that.
I don't know that would be helpful because I think he's thinking more along the lines of looking at the pay compensation versus pay around us, which we're already doing. I think it really, like I said, comes down to understanding how much money we have in the budget and how much we can allocate toward merit increases for our employees.
Go
Just to
ahead.
be clear, what I'd like you have the ability to do is to look at a new hire in the eye and say, we're going to pay you a comparable wage to the surrounding communities for the length of your career in St. Charles County. And I don't think you can say that right now, okay? So that's what I'm after, okay? Because I don't think we're doing that. And I can tell you what, I did look real hard at her study for the police department and compared that to what we could pull data from the Post-Dispatch, and there was a big discrepancy between those.
Okay.
So that being said, I mean, we've got, let's put it this way, we got a problem maintaining quality employees in this county. I mean, that exists, okay? I think we need to do something. Maybe we need to look at outside the box and a way of doing it. That's what I'm saying. Hard to get that done in one budget work session.
I agree. Any other thoughts? Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm just going to say that this, what I propose does not have to happen on this budget. And since somebody's brought up the point, well, how many years have these people been in their current position? Have they been promoted? And I need to go back and look at that and see how long they've been in their current position. So I'm not gonna discuss it anymore tonight.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this particular subject? Seeing none, then we'll move on to any other items of the budget that anyone would like to discuss. Seeing none?
It's a pretty standard budget. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary, whatsoever. One thing I think that is interesting, that might be something we want to look at a little bit more, and Joanne might tell us more about this, but last meeting at Corrections had a big change. I thought it was kind of a big thing. It went right through and consent agenda, we didn't talk about it. But we outsourced food service, a lot of food service for the Corrections Department, okay? And if there is a problem in the Corrections Department with not enough staff, that might be something to look at. I mean, there's counties that outsource their entire jail functions to outside companies, okay? So, I mean, that'd be another thing that we could do. If there's departments specifically, like Samantha said, like Corrections, where there is a staffing issue, I didn't bring that off the consent agenda because I knew that Dan's got problems in that department staffing, and he basically hired a food service company to come in.
Right.
So, I mean, that might be an opportunity down the road to save the county some money and help out with the staffing situation as well.
I think it helps that the administration made the move to kick back those prisoners from state to say, look, we need to decrease the population at the jail, even though it's going to cost us revenue that we had coming in. When you look at, to your point, what's costing us in overtime for all of those officers who were forced to have mandatory overtime, not to mention the fact after a while, I mean, you just burn them out. And if you burn them out, they're going to leave. So we've got to create a work environment where they can stay and have a satisfactory career and move through that. I think that was helpful to reduce the workload as well.
If you hadn't seen Tim Lomar's interview with Elliot Davis, you should see it because he did a really good job on it, and he explained part of the problem is that the courts are backed up 2 to 3 years in some instances because the Supreme Court didn't allow any cases be heard during COVID. So, I mean, that's another thing we could do. We could give the Corrections Department a big break if we can figure out a way, Nancy can figure out a way, to get those cases through the system a lot quicker and get them on the path to wherever they go.
My understanding from talking with judges and other people at the courthouse is that they have really picked up the pace now
Good.
that they aren't suffering from those Supreme Court rules about closures. So, but it's a logjam. And you're dealing with not just incarcerated people, but you're dealing with, domestic cases, you're dealing with abuse cases, you're dealing with all kinds of economic type things, and everybody wants to get their case heard, and, it's just a matter of fitting it all in, but I do think it's helping. But the other thing I think about the whole situation is when you think about your career or your kids, I mean, you don't really think about what a great job it would be to be a person who works at the jail, a corrections officer. So it seems to me that maybe we ought to look at raising the pay scale for those people, because maybe if we offered them more money, we'd be able to attract more applicants for the job, because it is a job that people get burned out on. And especially if we're requiring them, or a lot of them are volunteering, I don't think we're forcing overtime, but working overtime just exacerbates the situation, the stress and all of that. So, maybe there are certain kinds of jobs that we do need to look at offering some sort of a premium for hiring. And I notice we're having a lot of trouble finding people in the legal department. You're competing with people who can work for corporations and make more money, or people who might go into private practice and be able to make more money. And so there are certain kinds of jobs that we maybe need to offer a premium on to fill those positions that are essential to us.
You had something you wanted to add?
If you're finished with that subject, I would suggest, if you'd like, for Samantha, there is something in the PAP, which will be introduced tonight, that does address Mr. Hammond's concern a little bit, at least, a beginning perhaps, to get people through that 30-year before they retire. Can you talk about the promotional raises, Samantha, which is in the bill?
Yes.
You may want to say what the PAP is, so
Oh.
people understand.
The Personal Administration Program. We're talking about Section 115-600. And in it, we have the difference between if you go up 1 pay grade or 2 pay grades, if you're in pay band A, pay band C, pay band B. So we are proposing right now, pay band A is 1 pay grade up, you get an increase of 7%, and 2 pay grades, you get an increase of 10%. Which works for pay band A. But with pay band B and C, the ranges are quite large, as you guys are aware. And as such, what we have currently is just not sufficient to compensate those individuals when they get those promotions or reclassifications. So we're proposing that it goes to a 10% increase for 1 pay band, or for 1 pay grade move, and 14% for a 2 pay grade move, for pay band B and for pay band C. And the reason, again, is because whenever you're moving in those ranges, if you get what you're currently getting, it's not sufficient enough to increase or to pay those individuals for the increase. So we're hoping that this increase will help with that and to help them move through the ranges better.
Yeah, I can remember when it was 2.5%, which really isn't much at all.
Not moving you far.
Question for both you and Bob, is this incorporated in the new budget? How are you paying for this? What you do?
It's not yet, no.
Okay. Do you have any heartburn with it being?
No, we deal, you want to come up here?
That'd be great.
Anytime promotions take place, we have levels and pay grades established for different positions here in county government. So if someone is promoted from one job to another job, that job that they're going to is already budgeted. And so we should have dollars already in that slot for them. So there's not a whole lot of budgetary effect on those types of things. When people get promoted, they're going to a job that's already in the budget that has a higher pay structure to it, but it's already budgeted. So it really wouldn't result in any large hit to the budget.
Because that was one of the concerns I had with what Dave's proposal is where are we going to get that money, okay? But you're telling me you've got the money for this already figured out.
If the position that the employee is moving to in the promotion is budgeted, it's already covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, any other questions or comments about the budget at this point?
Yeah, in closing here, there's obviously, we always have concerns. Mr. Cronin brought up some very good points, that we've all brought up different things that we'd like to look into. But in general, I think we have to be pretty happy. Because normally about this time over the years, we've been, kind of asking people to maybe, feel some pain because we either didn't have the money for raises or we, only had cost of living. But this year with the 7%, and again, with inflation, and we all understand that those things make it a little bit more difficult. But at least I think we're making a pretty good faith effort with our employees to get them the 7% raise. And I think we should feel good about that, and we should thank our administration for trying to find ways to get that.
Good point. Go ahead, Joe.
I got one thing in closing too, and I've said this many, many times, so, but I'm gonna be the canary in the coal mine one last time. Our county is overly, in my opinion, overly dependent on sales tax revenue. We don't have personal property tax revenue to speak of. And while this year the revenue was good because sales tax revenue was up because there was a lot of stimulus money pumped into the economy, okay?
Right.
If that goes away and the economy declines like a lot of folks are predicting next year, we may be in a whole worse situation this time next year. So at the same token, everybody needs to keep in the back of their head that, you know, sales tax is what drives our government's revenue. And should that falter, we've got issues to deal with. So that being said, it's a good year for this year. Let's just keep our fingers crossed for next.
That's really the scary part about
Yep.
how we're financed with all of that. And we've seen it before when we went through 8, 9, 10, sales tax took a dive, and so did we. I think we're always playing that medium of you want to pay county employees fairly, but you are county government, which means the only way that we get money is to take it from our citizens to run the government. But you want to be able to keep good employees, so you return a good product to the county for what they're paying for. So there's always that happy medium there. We should never be the highest paid, but if we're the lowest paid, we're never going to get good employees. So it's a balancing act that we always have to have. And right now, I think it's probably for Samantha's job has probably never been tougher from the standpoint of everywhere you go, everybody's hiring. And I mean, you're giving out bonuses to work at grocery stores for entry-level jobs and bonuses to work at fast food places that we've never seen before, at least not in my lifetime. So, and I'm so young, so it could have happened before. Okay, so I think that's one of those kind of things where right now, we're probably facing a tougher situation than we ever have in terms of county. But to your earlier points, we need to not sleep on this and make sure that we're continuing to be competitive and pay our people fairly. Because at the end of the day, it is how much money you take home.
You know, and maybe we need to pass that thought on to some department heads and some of the other elected officials in this county government, okay? I called Mary Dempsey today because I saw that on the consent agenda, $250,000 for basically data entry. And we discussed it, and I don't have after she explained it, I don't really have an opposition to it. But one question I didn't ask her, that I begged to ask her now, would be the $250,000 so that the data entry can get done in a year's time instead of 5 years or whatever, so get it done quicker. But my question with her, I should have asked her is, and I think this is a question for a lot of department heads, would you rather take would you rather take less money and spend it on software and other things like data entry and save that money to promote and or retain employees within your own department? So for instance, with Mary, would it be better to take the longer time to get that data entry done and have that $250,000 so she has some key people that don't leave that department, okay? So I guess maybe if we can get the county department heads and elected officials, directors on that same page, say whatever savings you can provide to county government, okay, that gives us more of ability to make pay raises available to your employees so you retain the good staff that makes your job easier.
Dave, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think, I can tell you, I think most department heads, at least the ones I worked with back when I was working for the county, know that, so,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay.
You don't, at least I never went out and bought anything I didn't need.
All right, so with that, entertain a motion to wrap up our budget hearing.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So we will take a break until we start our meeting at 7 o'clock. Thanks very much.
Terry Hollander.